For more on this, I'm joined by Andres Silva, political analyst and consultant. Andres, great to have you back on the show with me. So we all watched the dramatic footage of US troops seizing an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Is this a clear escalation of tensions between Washington and Caracas?
Well, it's very interesting because, as we've seen, the seize of this oil tanker is not only the first time oil has been properly introduced into this geopolitical crisis that has been happening between Venezuela and the United States, but it also shows their efforts into expanding from only attacking the boats. Because as we know, these boats are small vessels, they're unarmed, or at least unarmed, to confront any big ships or any helicopters. So at this point, we're seeing how the United States government is preparing, maybe not to scale tensions towards a change in Venezuela, but they are definitely getting more pressure within the Caribbean Sea. As we know, the United States has several officials that have been starting to use keywords that were key in the Iraq crisis, such as now these drug boats are being called weapons of mass destruction for the United States people. And when we see that they are now starting to touch oil, this is just getting a little too familiar with what the Bush administration did 20 years ago.
In response to the incident, the Venezuelan government says this is an act of international piracy and it would denounce the incident to international bodies. What do you make of this, especially because the US doesn't see Maduro's government as legitimate?
Well, regardless of whatever perception we may have of the Venezuelan government, there is a legit case for Venezuelan authorities to bring this up in court. But as we've seen, it's been said by Vice President J.D. Vance, by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the United States has little to no concern whether international courts are involved or not. The United States is currently embarking in a crusade where they are dedicated to either getting a regime change in Venezuela or to at least get some pressure on the Venezuelan government to get a very, 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 very favorable deal within their natural resources. We've seen them, Vice President J.D. Vance tweeted at one point when they were questioned about the first strikes on drug boats. J.D. Vance said that he didn't care how they called them, crimes of war, breaking with basic human rights. They didn't care. And what they've demonstrated is that they truly are not concerned by what the international community thinks about them or what.
Andreas, we just seem to have lost you on the line. We seem to have some technical problems. We're going to see if we can get Andres Silva back. He's been speaking to me about the situation in Venezuela. I think we have Andreas back. Are you back with me, Andreas? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I do apologize. We lost your line there briefly, but I just want to touch on something that you were saying to me and drill into this a little bit deeper. You were speaking about J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and ignoring international law. Do you think this is an extremely concerning time for the people of Venezuela? What do people make of it there?
Yes, well, the people in Venezuela are very concerned with the current geopolitical situation, even though the overlapping issue within the Venezuelan people is how the economic crisis is affecting their everyday lives. This is especially heightened by the December celebrations because the Venezuelan people are not only very religious, but they're very familiar. So the crisis usually heightens up during December. But at this time, there is the very real possibility that the United States might be rising up the pressure. And for the Venezuelan people, what is concerning is not only what actions they may take, but whether the United States is taking into account the many different paths of repercussion that may happen depending on how they execute these operations.
And what could those paths of repercussion actually look like?
Well, it would very much depend on whether the United States is willing or not to put boots on the ground in Venezuela. As we know, that is not only a very unpopular action within the United States, more than 60% of Americans have said that they do not agree with any international intervention. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump ran as an anti-intervention candidate. But at this moment, what this could mean for the Venezuelan people is if there is truly operations in Venezuela that would lead to a change in the government, if they manage to change it and instill an opposition figure, this could very well mean a time of short instability because of how unprepared the country's institutions are to assume the change, because of how the military in Venezuela is almost completely backed by the government. So there would be no armed defense of this transition period. And at the same time, there is also the possibility that the United States might attempt a change of government in Venezuela, but that it may accidentally lead to a change from within the current ruling party. So this could be leading into a time of much uncertainty, especially because there is the armed branch of the current governing party, there is the more institutional and moderate branch. So what I hope the United States understands is that they might be opening a big Pandora's box in Venezuela if they are not careful about how they execute these operations.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're talking about this right now, but I would like to move on to another topic and turn to the Venezuelan opposition leader, María Corina Machado, who's won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's received the honor in secrecy and today has said she plans to bring her award back home to her country. We have seen her in Oslo. Let's take a listen just quickly to some of what she had to say.
The Maduro regime has waged war on Venezuelans, which has been classified as state terrorism by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and Crimes Against Humanity by the United Nations. Maduro's regime relies on totalitarian regimes from other parts of the world to attack and harm millions of Venezuelans.
Andrea, strong rhetoric there from Maria. What does her Nobel Peace Prize mean for Venezuelans' opposition movement? And given the risks she faces, what message is she sending? And how might the government, Maduro's government, respond to this?
Well, for the Venezuelan opposition movement, this is a massive accomplishment because, as we know, there have been several phases to the opposition movement. There has been Enrique Capriles, there has been Leopoldo Lopez, Juan Guaido, the most recent one. But at this moment, María Corina Machado has accomplished something only two Venezuelans in history have done. She's won a Nobel Prize. And at the same time, what this means is that she's playing in a different league, at least in the international state. She will not only be a chapter in Venezuelan history books, but she will also now be part of world history. She's now in a very select group of individuals. And what this does is, of course, this reivindicates not only her close to 18 months that she spent in hiding in Venezuela, but this also gives her the opportunity to have this insane presentation card for all the countries and organizations in the world that should allow her to get important high-impact meetings that clearly visualize the Venezuelan crisis with other countries in the world, so that it takes her cause to new countries. And the most important thing about this new route she must now embark on is that she has to find a way to manage the expectations with the Venezuelan people, which has always been one of the issues regarding the people that don't agree with her within the Venezuelan opposition. And she has to be very careful not to fall into the category of those other leaders that have been forced to flee the country, because at this point, María Corina Machado still holds a very favorable acceptance in Venezuela, but if the expectations keep building up and there is no palpable action for the Venezuelan people, she risks also being passed on into the former sense for the opposition.
And I want to just talk to you a little bit more about the geopolitics. It's interesting, the geopolitics around all of this. So President Trump appears to agree with María Corina Machado, but at the same time, we have seen President Putin calling Maduro. Putin and Trump seem to be on good terms. How does this all work out? There seems to be a really weird triangle going on here.
Well, there's also a very important point in that in that triangle. That is, of course, China in this equation. We know that the geopolitical chess match that has been played in recent months and in past years has been Venezuela and the United States, China and Taiwan, Russia and Ukraine. And in the last few months, we've seen how the pressure has been scaling up towards negotiation in all of these conflicts. So at this point, with Maduro being at the center of a Putin-Trump relationship, a María Corina Machado and Trump relationship, Venezuela has become, of course, not only a negotiating piece in all those other countries that are affected by what the United States' position is within those conflicts, but they are also in the very tough position of just having to resist and wait. Because as we know, María Corina Machado has done a great strategy with aligning herself with Donald Trump, even dedicating her Nobel Peace Prize to him. And with her newfound freedom after leaving Venezuela and reaching Oslo, she is now in a golden opportunity for her to not only touch up the European community with the tour that she announced she's going to do, but to end up in Washington, D.C. and directly discuss with Donald Trump.
Absolutely fascinating. Andres Silva, it's really been great to have you on the show, your insights and your analysis. Let's get more on this with former Trump state campaign chair Rob Artlett. Rob, there's a lot going on at the moment when we have a look at the geopolitics around this, as I was just discussing with Andres Silva before you. But I want to get your take on this. Did the US military seize an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela to gain control of the nation's oil resources, which we all know are the world's largest crude reserves?
Well, it's always a pleasure and an opportunity to be with you and your audience, so thank you very much for that opportunity. Look, make no mistake that President Trump remains very focused on securing and safeguarding the American people. This is an extension of that mission. And what he is doing is interceding, if you would, these oil tankers, or this specific oil tanker, along with shooting, of course, and destroying small drug boats, if you would. And that's exactly why he is doing this. He believes, through his intelligence and other sources, that these tankers, number one, of course, there is an embargo, correct? I mean, there is not to be any international shipping of the oil, but yet, so that's number one. Number two is, are there drugs on these ships? And so reality is President Trump is making the leader of Venezuela, he's getting his attention, is he not? And I think that's his ultimate goal, because he wants him to stop interceding and interjecting, if you would, illegal and illicit activity, to include drug running and shipping of oil to areas that they're not permitted to. So it's not about capturing their oil or seizing their oil for our use. It's to stop the illegal trafficking of the oil and the illegal trafficking of drugs. It's quite simple.
Okay, so it's basically to get the attention of Maduro to make America safer again. But I don't know if you heard my conversation a little bit earlier I was having with Andres Silva, and he said the US hasn't thought of repercussions if they put boots on the ground in Venezuela, if there is a regime change in the country and the instability that could actually cause. Now, do you think that the US and Pete Hegseth, who might have alleged to have done a double tap on a boat in Venezuela, is actually thinking about the consequences, Rob? Because I haven't heard anything about that coming out of the US.
Well, absolutely. And I think that make no mistake, there are a lot of conversations and a lot of leaders and a lot of strategists that are absolutely strategizing their steps and potential reactions with those steps. And to be very clear on the international waters when it comes to a drug boat, they have every legal right to be doing this. Many in our country, many media outlets in America don't believe that to be the case. But I would tend to lean on Secretary Hegseth and President Trump. They know what the legality is. They know they're right. People may not agree with it. People may not fully understand it. But there was a retired 4-star Army general that was reporting on the news here in America just yesterday, stating people are very confused on this issue for some reason, but our U.S. military has every legal right to be doing exactly what they're doing.
And according to polling from Reuters and Ipsos, a broad swathe of Americans oppose the US military's campaign of deadly strikes on boats. And with slipping approval ratings and the midterms coming up, and we've seen the Democrats win in a few places, should Donald Trump be really focusing on domestic matters at the moment? And of course, he did campaign that there will be no more forever wars that weren't in America's interest. And I just feel like he's pushing for a regime change here. And many people are saying that. And it's distracting from the economic hardships that a lot of American people are facing, Rob.
Yeah, I believe that this is a two-pronged approach by President Trump, meaning that this is an extension of his domestic policies. What are those domestic policies? It's safeguarding the American people at our borders. He's going beyond the borders because these drugs, these ingredients of these drugs on these boats are where do you think they're going to be going?
But Rob, sorry, just a quick question. Are there 100% drugs on these boats? Do they know that for sure, undoubtedly?
I would say yes. And I say that because let's not forget, I come from a former U.S. Navy intelligence specialist. So I understand what the intelligence is and what we do to garner that intelligence. So for me, they're not just going out there shooting any boat for any reason. No, they have intelligence. They have their sources. They have technology. They have satellite information. They know exactly what's on these boats and who's on these boats. That's why they're killing them. That's why they're going after them.